Hello and welcome to the program. I'm your host, Ron Whitlock, and let me give a special welcome to our new Coastal Bend and Los Dos Laredos viewers. We hope you'll learn something from the program today and will tune back in to us in the weeks to come. Following our continuing coverage of Democratic Party presidential candidate Barack Obama's plans to heavily-handedly deal with Mexico by forcing Mexico and Canada enter into renegotiations of the North American Free Trade Agreement, called NAFTA, with the arbitrary hammer of the United States opting out or tearing up that agreement, Obama has changed his mind a little bit possibly. We note that Republican John McCain is strongly for expanding NAFTA, CAFTA, and free trade in general. Now, even though Obama still tells us that if he's elected president on Tuesday, November the 4th, he wants to talk to Mexican leaders about including enforceable labor and environmental standards in the NAFTA Pact. He is dropping his unilateral renegotiations threat, however. Obama obviously is now a little bit more informed about President Clinton's role in NAFTA's creation of 20 million jobs in the United States and 5 million in Mexico. Barack Obama now admits somewhat that his rhetoric during the primaries in Ohio, the Rust Belt, and other labor union strongholds in the Northwest about NAFTA's approval by President Bill Clinton as having been a big mistake and devastating for the country was somewhat overheated. Obama's anti-NAFTA comments have already caused some Latino voters to move toward voting Republican because they felt like Obama seemed to be indicating that he might be willing to sacrifice the NAFTA jobs of Latinos in the Southwest for the union jobs in the northwestern part of the United States. Perhaps it's not too late, and his NAFTA clarification on the program today that we're reporting will help some of Obama's campaign and the campaigns of down-ballot Democrats who have been distancing themselves from him because NAFTA during the last Democrat president, Clinton, brought jobs and economic prosperity to South Texas and Mexico and the southwestern United States. We'll have more of Obama's comments to us about what his campaign commitments are for South Texas and the border region later on during this special pre-election edition. So stay with us. We have with us Tony Knopp, our par excellence professor of political science and history, University of Texas, retired. Tony, thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here.
We're going to let you help us kind of inform the viewers here on the program of what they can expect when they go on to the polls as they kind of go through where various candidates are as it relates to policy matters, where they stand on issues of importance. Now, you've heard a little bit of movement on the part of Barack Obama, getting away from the unilateral or tearing up of the NAFTA agreement. However, what he's telling to us, what he's telling to Fortune magazine and CNN about the unilateral aspect, he now sees some benefits to the free trade agreement called NAFTA. We do have a late statement just handed to me as we went on the air, a late statement from Austin, from Obama Policy Director Heather Higginbottom. Obama says he will work with the leaders of Canada and Mexico to fix NAFTA so that it works for American workers. He believes that NAFTA and its potential were oversold to the American people. It has not created the jobs and wealth that were promised. We can and must make trade work for American workers by opening up foreign markets to U.S. goods and maintaining strong labor and environmental standards. As president, he will work to amend NAFTA so that it lives up to those important principles. That's coming from his campaign just as we begin the program. So we get quotes that basically reaffirm what he has told other media interest somewhat about understanding now that free trade is good. There is some more positive and negative benefits of free trade and NAFTA in particular, even though I and Biden are opposed to CAFTA and other trade agreements with South America. Now we see a little bit of good out of NAFTA, but yet his own campaign is issuing a late statement as we go on the air saying again that a little bit more negative side than positive side.
Well, I think that's the problem, that he still really hasn't changed his position in any dramatic form. This sounds like a bit of a nuanced approach to it, and perhaps that's a good thing. I do think that he is open and has indicated an openness to some more free trade agreements. For example, a free trade agreement with Peru, he cites as an example of his willingness to go along with free trade agreements. The problem seems to be that he still is stuck on this idea that NAFTA and free trade in general has not paid off for American workers, has not paid off for the American people, and certainly that's in conflict with our understanding and our impression here in South Texas.
Obviously, if a man has heard for all these years, living in the Rust Belt, Chicago, plants closing, all the union base saying, NAFTA costs us these jobs, NAFTA costs us these jobs, it's hard for him to wake up one day and look at new information and suddenly say, yeah, they're wrong, and there really is a second position to this particular item, being NAFTA.
Well, the problem is that these jobs were leaving long before there was any NAFTA. Maquiladoras were forming on the other side of the border for 20 years or more before there was any NAFTA agreement. So those jobs were going to go anyway. If they hadn't gone to Mexico, they would be winding up, as many of them have now, in China or in Central America and other places, even places where we don't have a free trade agreement.
And at this particular point in time, just the anti-NAFTA commentary and rhetoric of Barack Obama has caused, based on my contacts within the maquiladora industry, for all maquila plans for the future to be put on hold, to be stopped by virtue of not knowing exactly where he's going to come down on the issue of NAFTA. Now, during the last and final debate between McCain and Obama, McCain forced Obama to explain more about NAFTA. This is what McCain said.
When Senator Obama said he would unilaterally renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Canadians said, yeah, and we'll sell our oil to China. You don't tell countries you're going to unilaterally renegotiate agreements with them. I am a free trader, and we need to have education and training programs for displaced workers that work, going to our community colleges.
Now, when reviewing again what McCain said, challenging Obama, and Obama's response to being free trade, anti-NAFTA, he still was a little bit vague about where he really stood on NAFTA.
Well, that's true. The problem is that Obama needs to try to hold on to his labor union base support, which is strong in the Democratic Party, and at the same time appeal to those who might have benefited in some way from NAFTA. And so he's been...
Which are the Latinos of South Texas, well, all the way to California.
Exactly. And so
he's got to get out his union-based votes, and they're working hard to get out the vote up in the Northwest, and he hopes he's going to get those who work for Hillary Clinton to a big degree because of what Bill Clinton did in giving the Southwest these NAFTA-related jobs. He's hoping he'll make that kind of inroad, even though McCain was leading in El Paso with the very first poll taken on the border.
I don't think that he considers the border vote as being that critical to his interests at this point. He's competing in where there is some battleground states, the Rust Belt area, so-called, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio particularly, and here along the border, Texas is probably going to go for McCain without any question. California will go for Obama without any question. And as a result, he doesn't see the point to trying to appeal that strongly to the people right here.
Now, we also have talked with Barack Obama about his position on the hated border wall being built currently, as we speak, by the Bush administration. Here's what Barack Obama told me via satellite as it relates to his position on the border wall.
Well, I think it's very important as part of comprehensive immigration reform to have strong border security. And in some cases that means fencing or some sort of barriers. But ultimately, we're not going to be able to build a wall across the entire Texas-Mexico border. And it impinges not only on landowners there, but it's not going to be effective. So what we have to do is work with the Mexican government. We've got to improve economic development on their side of the border so that they're creating jobs and economic development that can provide prosperity for their people. We have to have virtual borders, more effective border control, more effective border surveillance, more officials and officers who are handling the issues down there. And it's also important, though, for us to crack down on employers who I think oftentimes are taking advantage of undocumented workers in order to undercut American labor. And if we do those things, as well as a pathway to citizenship for those who are already in the United States and have put down roots here, are often raising families here and have children who are American citizens or are effectively American, if we combine all those strategies together, I think we can solve this problem.
Now, as you saw during my question to him about his position on the border wall, he segued into his position on immigration reform, which basically coincides with that of John McCain, which is he seems to be in favor of a path to citizenship of those who are here illegally. That would be a big carrot to the Latino voters of the Southwest and across the nation, the familia of those from South Texas, of trying to give them a way to get a path to citizenship.
Well, you know, none of the candidates from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama to John McCain have said they were in favor of putting up a giant border wall. They've all talked about some other kind of way of doing it, some kind of barrier, and McCain has said the same thing. I've checked on that. And they also agree on the desirability of having some kind of system by which people can come in either as guest workers or achieve citizenship if they're already here, or at least a legal status. So I don't think there's a whole lot of area of disagreement there. Now, McCain, because of his Republican base, has come out very strongly in favor of some kind of enforcement with regard to migration, illegal migration particularly, coming into the United States. And I don't think Obama has taken a position favoring illegal migration into the United States. So again, there's another kind of consistency on these positions. The nuances are there, though. McCain says we've got to have enforcement first before we can implement these other things. Obama has not been that strong on the enforcement first part.
Now, we have nothing to show you as it relates to any kind of a clip from John McCain, because he has not come to the Lone Star State, has not come to the Rio Grande Valley, Corpus Christi, or Laredo to ask for your vote, because he is working in swing states and other states where he's worried about him having the opportunity to be elected president of the United States. And Texas has already been counted by the pollsters as a red state going for John McCain. Now, during our satellite interview, question and answer period with Barack Obama, we did ask him if he would be in favor of the building out of the third dam as specified in the 1944 treaty between the United States and Mexico. The third dam specified would be located, according to the treaty, possibly and probably north of Laredo, which would provide a barrier to aliens, illegal or otherwise, smugglers coming across, because the lake above the dam would provide a body of water for them to have to swim. An improved volume of water behind the dam would provide also more water below that dam into Laredo. That in itself would cause them to have to swim longer, harder, and spending more minutes swimming, which in effect is more important even than a border wall to be created. Here's what he said.
Well, I think it's very important for us to look at the infrastructure in the region. Levees are going to be absolutely critical, and I think we have to design those levees in a way that they can withstand a Category 4 or 5 storm. They aren't in the kind of shape that they need to be. I think it's also important for us to look at what kinds of natural barriers might be available to deal with some of the storms that could arise, because if we are oftentimes building man-made barriers, but we don't have the natural barriers that have been put in place, then we can be overwhelmed no matter how much we invest. So I think it's important for us to combine environmentally sound approaches with infrastructure improvements. That's something that has been lacking under this administration. It's something that I would make a top priority.
Now, as you saw, Barack Obama really kind of keyed in on the question as it relates to using the natural barriers, the river, the lake, the levees, and all of that sort of thing. So he talked more and more, almost got off track about the natural barriers being something we needed to work on. He also is in favor, as you noted, Tony, in trying to improve the levees to withstand a Category 4 or 5 storm. Those levees would be along the Rio Grande, any other area of South Texas where hurricanes do come in. There have been a lot of damage in El Paso, Del Rio, Laredo, South Texas, where the river has overflown its banks and cause a lot of damage and some death.
And that's where that third dam would be very, very important. We had a terrible overflowing of the river up by Presidio and a severe threat up above Laredo. And so a dam in that area would certainly be a big factor there. But notice again that Obama, like McCain, is looking for alternatives to this massive border wall and searching for the kind of a virtual wall that a lake created by the dam would certainly provide.
Interstate 69, how important is it to build out, linking up the Northwest, Detroit, with South Texas, a tri-legged interstate, one coming down to Brownsville, one to McAllen, one to Laredo. In particular, the first important leg being worked on now by TxDOT to extend 37 from Corpus Christi to the Port of Brownsville, connecting those two ports. Why is that so important, Tony, to connect up these two ports in lieu of the fact that the Panama Canal is being increased in capacity? All of the truck traffic is increased 300% at Brownsville all the way to Laredo with commercial truck traffic, pre-NAFTA, post-NAFTA.
Well, this is important to South Texas because this is where the traffic is coming through. If we have a new, wider Panama Canal, then goods can come from China, from the Far East, through the Panama Canal, ships that cannot come now because the Panama Canal built starting back in 1903 and finished about 1915, was only built to accommodate ships of that era. They're much larger now with these tremendous cargo containers that they bring along. Well, anyway, if we can get those ships up to here, up to the ports here in the Gulf, it'll be a tremendous boom for our economic development here.
And now our interview with Bill Richardson in Corpus Christi, where he says he is in favor of I-69 being completed in South Texas.
I hope you get this highway. Highways bring jobs, they bring economic development, and I think here in Texas, with the great potential of trade with Mexico, just connecting this huge state, I'm very much for it. In fact, New Mexico and Texas are working together on this.
We also visited during an interview with Federico Pena, former Transportation Secretary to Bill Clinton during the Clinton administration, the last Democrats to occupy the White House. Here's what Federico Pena, who was raised in Brownsville, born in Laredo, had to say about finishing out Interstate 69 in South Texas.
As you know, as former Secretary of Transportation, I spent a lot of time in Texas and throughout the country working on improving our highway system and our transit system. One of the things that Barack Obama has said is we've got to create a new infrastructure fund, which will have billions of dollars of new money, which would go for infrastructure. And we are hopeful that there will be enough money to help projects like that one in Texas. These roads are like the one that you described, which are important to the economy of Texas and the country, frankly, are the ones that we invest in. So he's been very clear about that, and I believe he would be very supportive.
We have no report of exactly where John McCain would stand on the completion of I-69 because he has no campaign staff in the Lone Star State of Texas. We want to bring you up to date a little bit about a state Senate race, heart of the district, Laredo, another part of the district, Starr County, the Rio Grande Valley, another part coming into the Coastal Bend area just north of Corpus Christi, San Patricio County. We talked to Louis Bruni, the Republican, challenger to Senator Judith Zaffirini, the incumbent, asking him why he thought he ought to be elected and she ought to be unelected.
Senator Zaffirini has been there 22 years, and she's a career politician. She accepts donations from everybody. She deregulated tuition, made it very hard for us to send our children to college, and she calls herself the champion of the children. Yet on the Senate floor she said, I will not lower property taxes at the expense of the low-income smoker.
Yeah. These are the negative things about your opponent. Now, on the positive side, what would you bring to the table if the voters give you their vote?
I'm a conservative. I don't believe in spending money only if it's wisely. I had 4 balanced budget. I lowered the taxes.
As county judge?
As county judge. 4 balanced budget. I lowered the taxes, and I was the first Webb County judge to get an A+ bond rating in New York. She had which is to me totally, with Texas A&M letterhead, they had an evening for Judy Zaffirini, and it's quoted here as she's saying, to get reelected, she'll outwork them, outsmart them, outthink them, and when it comes to campaigns, outspend them. She loves to spend money.
We extended an interview to incumbent Senator Judith Zaffirini to come to our television affiliate in Laredo, KGNS, for an interview. She declined and did not come. Quite an interesting race between a former county judge, Bruni family, very powerful politically, historically, over the decades, and the longest sitting member in the Texas State Senate, Judith Zaffirini.
Well, indeed, it's certainly a challenge for Bruni. First of all, a Republican in South Texas, particularly up in Laredo, which is not noted for electing Republicans. And the fact that Judith Zaffirini has been in there for so long and apparently has not generated a lot of negative image. Bruni, on the other hand, is a county judge, former county judge, and the family well known there and very influential going back a century.
However, he was unelected when he ran for re-election. Maybe a factor. Many don't think of the fact that, in effect, whoever sits in that position, Zaffirini or Bruni, also represents the Rio Grande Valley via Starr County, and along with the other two senators, Hinojosa and Lucio, and igualmente lo mismo cosa in the coastal bend, because all three senators are up there. You've got Lucio at the south, Chuy coming into the heart in Oasis County, Zaffirini at the north, San Patricio County.
Well, they all would have then a common interest in representing the interests of the whole South Texas area rather than one specific part of it, and I think that's to our benefit.
Why do we still have an electoral college, and basically how it works?
The electoral college, we have an electoral college because it's part of the Constitution. There would have to be a constitutional amendment in order to change the electoral college.
And basically to keep one state from overriding a smaller state.
What happens is that each state gets a certain number of electors, 2 for each state because there are 2 senators, and then the number of representatives each state has. Now, because each state has 2 senators, that means there's a somewhat of an advantage for small states in having a little more clout in the selection of the president in the electoral college.
Why would it not be a good idea for Texas, being a big state and whose power and influence is minimized by this college, to have what goes on in other states, and that is have the electors be assigned by a congressional district rather than by the winner-take-all system we have in the Lone Star State now. Under that scenario, we would have John McCain on our television program responding to the people, and also we would have Barack Obama more in Texas if, in fact, the popular vote was handled in order to get electors and electoral college on a congressional district basis.
Well, as a matter of fact, 2 states already do have that. Nebraska and Maine already provide for that. But Texas, I think a lot of people in Texas feel that Texas would lose some of its clout if it did that. That Texas is a very influential state precisely because it can deliver a large number of electoral votes. And if we ever become competitive, well, then it could be very important.
But at this point, those electoral votes are being given historically to the party out of power, losing power, that being the Republican Party.
In this case. One might say the same thing about California, though, the last couple of elections. They were also a big state with a lot of electoral votes, and they were supporting the party out of power.
Thank you for joining us once again, Tony Knott.
My pleasure.
Retired professor of political science and history. Thank you for joining us here on Ron Whitlock Reports. Till next time, adios.